So, hello everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel. Hope you are doing well. So, as you know, we have started the channel on the subject that is a software engineering, right? So, we have almost right more than the half completed the subject. In the previous video, we have seen the different type of software designing, the component level design, architecture design, user interface design. We have seen the different aspect of designing, right? So let us let us quickly review where we exactly in the subject are. So we have discussed the phases of the software development life cycle: communication, then planning, then modeling, then we have the coding and testing, and we have the maintenance. So yes, we have completed the we can say the communication or the requirement analysis, requirement engineering. Now you guys able to map our content with all these phases. We have caught up the requirement engineering, that is related to the communication and planning. We have covered up the project planning, that is covered up with the planning. Then we have done the software designing part, that is exactly the deals with the modeling phase of the software development life cycle, right? So in the software designing, there are the different parts of designing: architecture design, component level design, user interface design. So now finally we are in the next phase, second last phase, that is the design and the implementation. Yes, there is a somewhat part of design is still remain, that is almost related to with the implementation, right? So now we are at, yes, let's say once our design, our modeling is ready, our paperwork is ready. Now it's time to work on the coding onto the specific language like Java, .NET, Python, etc. So let's move towards this next slide, right? So the software design and the implementation is the stage in the software engineering process at which an executable software system is developed. So this is the kind of phase uh, at which exactly all the requirements comes into, or the planning, all the modeling comes into the execution mode, right? The software design and the implementation activities are invariably interleaved. They are completely dependent on each other. Software design is creative activity in which you identify software components and the relationship based on the customer's requirements. So what exactly the software design is? What exactly the software design is? The software design is a creative activity in which you will identify the software component. Like let's say if you are making ERP system, so in your software designing you will identify the different software component. You will establish the relationship between them, right? And the implementation is the process of realizing the design as a program. Yes, so this both process are comparatively dependent to each other. The software design is a activity in which you will identify the component, while the implementation is the process of converting the executable form of your design, right? So let us move that. We will understand more the definition once we move ahead, right? So build or a buy in a wide range of domains. It now possible to buy off the shelves of system that can be adapted and tailored to the user's requirement. Yes, uh, uh, software. There are so many software available in the market, but it it is not necessary that all the softwares fulfill your requirement. All the softwares fulfill your requirement. You have to customize your software. That is where exactly that creating the new software, though we have the type of software in the market, there is a creating the new software. The demand of creating the new software comes into the picture, right? So now let us move towards the object oriented design using the UML. So this is how exactly we are doing uh, object oriented design with a unified modeling language, that is a non short term as a UML, that is a unified modeling language. Okay, so UML is nothing but it's it's a category, it's a type of diagrams through which you can create a software designs. Using that, you will develop your executable code from that designs, right? So what exactly the object oriented design process is? It's a structured object oriented design process involves developing a number of different system models. They require a lot of efforts for development and maintenance of these models, and for small systems this may not be cost effective. However, for the large systems developed by the different groups, design models are an important communication mechanism. So there are different phases available into the. There are the different process stages in the object oriented design, which includes, first of all, define the context and modes of use of the system, define the system architecture, identify the principal system objects, develop a design models, and specify the object interfaces, right? So we are talking about the object oriented programming like Java, C++. So we will be dealing with the object oriented design as well. So you can see designing the objects and object interfaces. So we'll see, move on. So there are the different kinds of object oriented design diagrams that are very much helpful to develop the code. These are the similar kind of design we have in the code. The first kind of diagram we have, that is a system context diagram, in which we are defining the all over the system context. So let's take the example of the weather station. So to define the system context, we are defining the context with the different boundary boxes, like what components all this system have. So the weather station will have the control system, weather information system, it will connected with the satellite, it will connected with the weather station. Now you can see all these components have relationship between them, and you can see all the notation one dot dot n. So this is nothing but a one to one relation, one to many relation. So here see, so this is side 1 and this is 1 dot n. So this is a one to many relationship between satellite and the weather station. So between satellite and the weather information system, that is a one to one relationship, the kind of relationship you have in the database. So when you are defining the tables, when you are defining a database, you have to set up the kind of relationship between them, right? The next kind of diagram we have, that is a use case diagram. The use case diagram defines the main features that are visible to the end users. Let's say you are creating a weather station software. So which are the features a user will see? So let us take example of the ATM machine. When you go into the ATM machine, which are the options you can see over there? Like cash withdrawal, balance inquiry, changing your password or the PIN. So these are the main features. So these main features are described as a use case diagram, right? As a use case diagram. So we have the weather information system, we have the control system over here, that which will have the different features like report the weather, report the status, restart the system, shut down the system, reconfiguration system, power save, and remote control. So these are the features one have developed, and these are, you can see, nothing but the users of the system, either the weather information system or the because all this data is coming from another website, that is nothing but the weather information system, and you can say the system control user, right? So this is a kind of diagram the way we are calling as a we can say the use case diagram. So these are the different terms for the use case. Report the weather. Actor means the users of the system, right? Then we have the circles, no, that is a ellipse. So that is nothing but the exactly the use case, exact features of the system. Then we have the architectural design that we have already seen, that you can see it will show the overall architecture and the collection of the components, and that components is nothing but the collection of classes, but we are seeing overall abstract view of the system in the architecture level design, right? Now next terms comes into the picture. Let's say we have decided that we will implement the project into the Java language. Right? So it is really important to identify the different classes to be implemented. and that is the reason why we are adopting the object oriented design using the UML diagrams. So there is a one technique of we are saying that is object class identification, in which we will identify the classes and design the classes in the form of diagrams. Once the diagram is ready, then the implement would be much more faster and easier. So the main question is that, let's say you are designing a ERP system, so you will be worrying about what are the classes I will take, what are the variables of that, and what are the methods of that. So there are some process and there are some steps to identify the classes. Okay, so let's move towards that. So the object class identification, identifying the object class is often a difficult part of the object oriented design. Yes, there is no magic formula for object identification. Object identification is an iterative process. You are unlikely to get it right first time. Now, approaches to identification use a grammatical approach based on a natural language description of a system, base identification on tangible things in the application domain, use a behavioral approach, and identify objects based on what participates in what behavior. So this is a main technique. You have to properly understand the requirement first. Then the first step, you have to identify the real-time objects into your requirement. So what are the real-time objects? Let's take the example. Let's say we are defining the ERP system. So the one object would be the student, right? So the one object would be the student. So you will be defining a student class. The next object would be the faculty. So you will be defining the faculty class. The third object would be, you can say, admin, or you can say the timetable. We will have the timetable class, right? So this is the kind of thing you have to identify the real-time entities, or we can say the real-time objects into your software. According to that, you can identify the real-time classes. On the basis of that, you will define the further details of that class. So let's see, move ahead. So in the weather station object classes, object class identification in the weather station system may be based on the tangible hardware and data in the system. Let's take the example, ground thermometer, a weather station, and the weather data. This is the kind of classes we have, because this is the hardware system, this is not a software system. Yes, it's a hardware plus software system. So in that you have to identify the actual hardware component, and the data is passing on that. According to that, you can identify the classes. So let's see that which are the classes of that. So these are the different types of classes you can see here. So this is exactly the notation of the class. You can see there is a rectangle box. There will be the two parts of that. First part, you can see, that is your barometer. So barometer is nothing but the class name, and the second part will have the variables. Okay, so let me go into the detail, like class diagram examples onto the Google. So you can see the exact, let me find the exact example for you guys. Yes, you can see there are exactly the three parts of the class diagram. Three parts. There is a rectangle box. There will be the three parts of the class diagram. The first part would have the name of the class, that is your duck. The second part would have the variables that particular class will contain. Yes, you can see what exactly the class is. Class is nothing but the collection of the variables and the methods. So the second part will have the variables and the values, and the third part will have the methods. The third part will have the methods for the particular class. This is how we are defining a class in the UML notation, in the unified modeling language. Yes, so yes, so this is the kind of thing we are defining into the class diagram. So you can compare here. There is a barometer. So this is not a fully visible, but now you can compare that. It will have the three parts. The first part will have the name of the class. The second part will have the variables that particular class will contain, and the third part will have the methods that needs to be defined in that particular class. So the technical term in the variables in the class, we are treating as attributes, or we can say the properties of a class. Properties of a class is same as the variables of a class, or the same as the attributes of a class, right? So similarly, in the methods, we are treating as a behavior of a class. Methods are same as a behavior, both are the synonyms, right? So in the future, you will get some terms. Don't be confused on that, right? So this is a second type of class identification and drawing the class diagram. See, once you have identified the real-time objects, then once you have defined all the class diagrams, now it will be very much easier task for a developer to get the class name, get the variables defined, and get the methods defined. So his or her task would be to just write the business logic, right? So this is the kind of thing we have to understand, right? Then we have the design models. The design models show the objects and the object classes and the relationship between this entities, right? So design model is nothing but showing the objects. So class object is nothing but the instance of a class. When you are defining a class, ultimately you are defining an instance of a class, that is the object, right? So now we have this is the thing we have taken care about the class diagram. Now there are some other UML diagrams which are very helpful for the data flow of the system, the communication the system have, the relationship between all this data and the components in the system. So let's move towards that one by one. That is a so now this was a design model. Now we are coming into the subsystem models. The subsystem model shows how the design is organized into the logically related group of the object. So we have defined the class, right? That is ultimately we have defined the object. So object is nothing but the instance of a class, right? Now we have to define the communication between all the objects. Now we have to define the communication between all the objects, all the entities. So how we can define that? We have the sequence models, or we can set the sequence diagram. Now you can see on the first hand side, that is a rectangle. The rectangle, it shows this nothing but rectangle. It is showing as nothing but a object. Colon set commons is a object of a particular is the object of set coms class. Colon weather station is a object of a weather station class. Colon coms link is a object of a coms link class. So this is how we are defining a object. The straight line is a lifeline of that particular object, how long the object will live. Now you can see a particular user comes into the system, request to the SATCOMs, that request will go to the weather station, that goes to the ComSync, and that goes to the weather data, and respond, and finally the reply. So this is how we are defining a communication between the objects using the sequence diagram. This is how we are defining the communication with the objects using the sequence diagram, right? Now it's also important, if you remember that we have, when we were studying the Java, we were defining a state of an object. We were defining the state of an object. Let's say in the you have defined a class name that is a student. You have defined a class name that is a student. A student will have the variable that is a age. So let's say his current age is 20 years. So you can say the state of a student of age is 20. So that state will change after a year, after a month. After the year, the student will become a 21 years, 22 years, 3, 4, and 5. So this is a kind of thing. The state of an object will change. So to defining a state, to defining the transition of a state, we have the different kind of diagram. The diagram is called as a state diagram. So let us see that. Now you can see all the object shutdown is a one. It's not an object. It's nothing but the states of the object. It's nothing but the states of the object. Let's say one object is defined. These are the nothing but the state of the object: shutdown, configuring, running, collecting, summarizing, transmitting, testing, and control. So these are nothing but the different state of the objects, right? Start with this particular field circle with the shutdown, then configuring, the running, then we have the controlled, then testing, then we have the summarizing. So this is the kind of all the states, all the methods, all the processes going on. We are defining with the state diagram, right? So now, let us move towards the implementation part. So we are almost done with the software designing, modeling. I hope you have more understanding on the modeling or software designing. So software designing is nothing but we are like, it's a creative process when you are defining your implementation on the paper. While implementation is nothing but you're converting your software design into the executable form, right? So let's move towards the implementation. So implementation is nothing but whatsoever you have designed, use case diagram, the state diagram, that your class diagram, you are converting your design into the implementation, you are converting into the executable form. The any of the languages you have defined, Java, .NET, PHP, Python, and XYZ. But the concern is that we have to follow some certain amount of coding standards and coding processes, so for the effective coding and the effective output, right? So let's move towards that. So yes, this is the different software development life cycle where we are coming into the maintenance. Reducing the cost of software maintenance is most often cited reason for following the coding conventions. So this is where exactly the software coding conventions plays a major role, reducing the cost of software maintenance. So maintenance is a very much important phase. Once you have developed all the software, you have delivered to your client, right? The software maintenance is there. Your client is paying some amount for the some amount for maintenance to you, some amount to maintenance to you, right? So what we are saying that to reduce the cost of the software maintenance, the coding convention should be followed properly. Code conventions are important to programmers for number of reasons. 40 to 80% of the lifetime cost of the piece of a software goes to the maintenance. Hardly any software is maintained for its whole life by the original owner. Coding conventions improve the readability of the software, allowing the engineers to understand the new code more quickly and thoroughly. See, let's say it is not possible that one developer is developing a particular software will be there to handle their lifetime, right? It might be possible one developer is coming, he will be developing a 50% of software, the rest 50% of software will be developed by other, and the maintenance will be taken care by the third software developer. So the coding convention should be followed properly so that every engineer comes to a code will have the very easy readability of your code, right? Now we have definition. We are not going into the definition, right? So let's move towards a coding convention. The coding conventions are the set of guidelines for the specific programming language that recommend the programming style. See, this coding convention are so see, there are the different kinds of convention. So this changes according to the programming languages. This changes according to the programming languages. We'll see into the future. This convention usually cover the file organization, indentation. Indentation means spaces and the tabs. Comments, the types of comments you should provide, declarations, statements, white space, naming convention, programming practices, and the programming principles. Software programmers are highly recommended to follow these guidelines to help improve the readability of the software. Coding conventions are highly only applicable to the human maintainers and the peer reviewers, right? Where the coding conventions have been specifically designed to produce a high quality code, it depends on the quality, right? And have been formally adopted and then become the coding standard. Now the goal is to implement the design in the best possible manner. Coding affects the testing and the maintenance. The more quality code you develop, the less testing and the less maintenance you will have. As testing and the maintenance costs are high, aim of coding activity should be to write a code that reduce them. Hence the goal should not be to reduce a coding cost but testing and the maintenance cost, right? It means the make job of a tester and maintainer easier. How? Following the coding convention properly, right? The purpose of the coding standards and the best practices to develop a reliable and the maintainable application, you must follow coding standards and the best practices. There are several standards exist in the programming industry. None of them are wrong or a bad, and you may follow any of them. There are so many standard available. So you can follow anything, right? But follow throughout your software development lifecycle. Now we are covering into the how to follow the standard across the team. If we have a team of different skills and tests, you are going to have a tough time to convincing everyone, right? So how to develop that? Like distribute a copy of this document well ahead of coding standards meeting. all members should come to the meeting prepared to discuss. So you should define a coding standard in the one document. Before starting to the project, you will deliver all this copy to every team member, like you have to follow this particular coding standard. Discuss all the points in the document. Everyone may have the different opinion about each point. Just discuss out each and every coding standard with your team member, right? Then once you are developing, you should do the peer-to-peer review. Another team member review the code to ensure that the code follows the coding standard and meets the requirement. Architect review. The architect of the team must. So there are the different kinds of testing of this coding standard. The first is a peer-to-peer review. What you have developed will be reviewed by your teammate. Then another is the architect review. What you have developed will be reviewed by your team leader, or you can say your product architect. Then you have the group review. Randomly select one or more files and conduct a group review once in a week. You are like setting a group of a team and reviewing the whole code, right? So this is a kind of thing that should be followed. Now there are the different types of programming principle, like structure programming, information hiding programming practices. In one of this, it's a coding standard. One of the standard is the file organization. So this is the kind of thing the coding standard should be followed. Like you should provide the proper indentation. You should provide the proper indentation into your code. A variable function and class name should be understandable. You should provide the proper comments whether it is required. Declaring pointer, you should be taken care in the specifically in the C language, because pointers are very much complicated things to handle, right? A standard is defined for the language project. If everyone follows the standard, the code is easy to read. So that is the main advantage of the coding convention. Coding conventions are the set of guidelines for the specific programming language, right? This convention usually cover the file organization, indentation, comments, declarations, statements, white space, naming convention, and so on. The software programmers are highly recommended to follow these guidelines to help to improve the readability of their source code and make the software maintenance more easier, right? Yes, the goal of the coding is to implement the design in the best possible manner. Coding affects the testing and the maintenance, so the task of the testing and maintenance would be much more easier if you are properly following the coding conventions, right? A testing and the maintenance codes are high. Aim of a coding activity should be to write a code that reduce them, right? Then we are saying that hence the goal should to reduce the task of the coding and the testing. So purpose of the coding standard to develop the reliable maintainable applications, you must follow coding standard and the best practices. Yes, we already have discussed this, how to follow into the team. Yes, type of reviews, peer review, architect review, and the group review. Yes, the kind of coding convention, the file organization should be proper. Each file should contain one outer class and the name should be same as the file. Line length should be less than 80. Special characters should not be avoided. So this is the kind of file organization you guys have. File naming convention. File names are made up of base name and the optional period and the suffix. Okay. Then the first character of the name should be a letter and all characters should be lowercase letter and the numbers. The base name should be 8 or fewer characters and the suffix should be 3. So this is the kind of a file name. Now you can see the minmo.save. So this is the kind of convention you should follow while saving the file. You should follow all the lower characters. Later you should avoid the special characters, right? Provide the proper extension on that. Then we have the naming convention. The naming convention of the file changes with the languages. For the C# you can say, for the Java you can say, right? Then we have to use the prefix I in the camel casing for the interfaces. So this is specifically goes with language to language basis, right? And then we have the proper indentation and for the spacing for the different languages. It applies different. So the Python completely works on the indentation. So they do not follow the curly brackets and all that. They completely work on the indentation, right? Then we have one of the example, let's say if you are writing a if statement, after the curly braces you should provide the tabs with the proper indentation. The code should be properly followed. The Python is very much strict to the indentation bit because it does not deal with the curly brackets. It only understands the indentation. So in the Python, you must more take care about the indentation. Then we have the use one blank line to separate a logical groups of code. Let's say this is a one kind of logic, and you should provide the one space for the another logic and one space for the another logic. You should provide the one space for the another logic of a code. Yes, should be one and only one single blank line between each mentioned inside the class. The curly bracket should be on a separate line and should not be in the same line. So this is a kind of thing changes according to the user to user and to the language to language. So use has region to group a related piece of code together if you use a proper grouping. So try to group your code. Try to group of related type of code into a one separate group, right? Keep a private member variables, properties and methods in the top of the file. So this is a kind of technique. Keep a private member variables as a property on the top of a file and the public members in the bottom. So now this is a kind of good programming practice. Avoid writing a very long methods. Yes, avoid writing. If your method is too much long, try to put try to break into the subpart. A method should only typically have 1 to 25 lines of code. If a method is more than 25, break it to the another method. Method name should tell what it does. Your naming should be proper for the method. Like saving a phone number method, the method should be save phone number. The method name should be like this. A method should do only one job. Do not combine more than one job in a single method. Yes, that exactly the more important thing. Then we have always watch for unexpected values. For example, if you are using a parameter with two possible values, never assume that if one is not matching, then only the possibilities are. So try to do the proper testing of your code while you're in that is called the unit testing. Try to test your code with the multiple values. Do not hard code number, use the constant instead. Declare constant in the top of. So rather than doing this, rather doing hard coding, rather define the constant, like constant integer months equal to 10 and use that variable everywhere, right? Convert string to lowercase or uppercase before comparing. So this is a very much important. While you're comparing a string, first convert it to the lower or uppercase, because it may be possible in your name your first character would be capital, where comparing the result will not be as desired. Use string empty instead of. So try to use string so this is depends on the you can say the language to language, right? Then here avoid using a member variables. Declare local variables where, so in a class there are methods. So class variable are closed as a member variable. Function variable used are called as a function variable. So try to use a function variable within for the function and member variable for the class. Use enum whenever it required. Do not use a numbers or a strings to indicate a discrete value. So try to use the enum where it is required, right? Do not make a member variables public or protected. Keep them private and expose public protected properties. If the required configuration file is not found, application should be able to create a one or more default value. So this is a kind of thing, depends on application to application basis. Error message should help. So try to provide the error and the exception into your code. Whether your code is not working, provide the proper error message or the proper exception message. Show short and friendly message to the user, but a long and actual error with your possible information, right? Do not have more than one class in a single file. Yes, this is a file, good. Avoid having a very large files in a single file. It has more than 1000 line of code. It is a good kind of refactoring. Avoid the public methods and the properties unless they really need to access from the outside the class. So this is all depends. If you are more aware about the object oriented programming, avoid passing too many parameters to method. If you have more than 4 to 5 parameters, it is good to candidate to define a class or a structure. If you have so many of parameters, rather than define a class or a structure. So this is the kind of thing. You have to taken care. Now we are coming to the architecture level. Coding convention: use the n-tier architecture, 2-tier architecture, 3-tier architecture. Use try and catch in your data to identify, to means provide the exception handling. Your code should not stop. Separate your application into the multiple assemblies. Group all the independent utility classes into the separate class library. Then comments are good and meaningful. Comments make a code more maintainable. Do not write comments for every line. Write it wherever it is required for the future reference, right? Do not write comments if code is easily understandable. So no need to write the comments where the code is easily understandable, right? Write the comments wherever required only. If you have to use some complex or a weird logic for a reason, document it. The bottom line is write clean readable code. Perform spelling check on the comments. So it is not like you should write anything on the comment. Do the proper thing, proper commenting and all that. So guys, this was about the implementation, and it was about the coding convention you should follow, right? So from the next lecture we will be looking into the testing and the testing methodologies and the testing strategies. Okay, so thank you very much for watching a video. If you have any doubts, please put the comment on. We'll have that. Thank you very much.